Okay, so you might notice that we are still at the Holiday Inn Express, and it's about 30 minutes later than it should be. And the reason for that, and I'll have already posted my rant video by the time anyone sees this. EVgo has a website user account portal, and you can access and see what's happening with your car, what's happening with your account. You can activate and deactivate charges basically remotely, right, as long as you're hooked up. I've used it on a few different occasions, and at this point in time, when I opened it up and loaded it, it listed my car as actively charging. It has a regular timer, and the timer continued past 30 minutes. There was no indication of anything of reactivating a charge or anything else. It basically said your car is charging, and that's all fine and dandy. Unfortunately, my Chevrolet app is on the fritz right now, so there was no way of me independently verifying it. So I just had to sort of trust the EVgo website. I'm in the middle of dinner. These chargers are not consistent about when they do or don't shut off at 30 minutes. So I thought, I'll trust it. I'll let it do its thing. And I shouldn't have trusted it. When I came out from dinner, the charge had stopped. It was already stopped at 30 minutes. So that's just not enough time, or that's not enough range to get me to my next charging stop. And where I want to go, I basically only wanted to make 2 stops. And so where I want to go is about 160 miles from here. And I think I have enough range. Right now the minimum says 142. Now the estimate says 180. It's based on my recent driving, and so this should be a very similar amount. You should expect about 220 miles or so out of a charge. So 160, 80% should be good enough. And we just passed the 80% mark not too long ago, and it just dropped from 25 kilowatts down to about 16. So I'm feeling pretty confident now that it's going to be able to, we'll be able to make it on the current charge rate, or the current level of charge that we have. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up here. Yeah, it says 160 miles, and notice now instead of getting there at 11 to 11:30, we're expected to get there at midnight, basically. So thank you again, EVgo, for that. I can cycle it on and off to update the minimum range amount. The regular estimate is typically fine, and now it's 148. And I'm not gonna go past this slow level of charging at this point isn't worth waiting on. So I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss the charge and unhook and skedaddle. These are pretty normal conditions, right? In the middle 70s. Maybe there's some wind here or there, but really nothing of note. And I'm pretty much maintaining EPA estimated range or estimated efficiency of about 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty much what you can expect for 70 to 75 mile an hour driving. And again, as conditions or other factors change, your mileage will vary. And we are heading north. I would say north to Alaska, but we're heading north. The rush is on. Yeah, but I am a little bit frustrated with the EVgo experience, and I'll let them know as publicly as I can. I have no issue with shaming a company for lackluster performance. You know, they want to provide a service or offer a service. They need to do a good job of it. There's no excuse. And of course I'll be watching my minimum range and seeing how it adjusts relative to the distance I have left to travel. I mean, I knew it was going to be a late night, but whatever. You know, this is a learning experience for us all. Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry. Hey, not bad for a quadruped. That means 4 paws. No, not forefathers. Young Mimbi. Too much coffee. So we're driving through Fresno right now. You know, there are a number of fast chargers within Fresno, but I almost never stop inside the city limits. So I haven't really checked the availability or the reliability of any of those chargers. One thing I have been noting though is just watching the minimum range estimate versus the range to target, and the gap has been closing, not super fast, but it's basically like, you know, one step back, 2 steps forward. So it's slowly, you know, the two are slowly starting to match or equalize, which, you know, I've driven this route enough to know at this point that 80% battery should be enough, but it's still good just to keep an eye on it, make sure that the trends are where they need to be, and that you don't want to get stuck with any sort of sudden surprises. And with Galt is kind of in the middle of nowhere, so even still, if I arrive with a low state of charge, I'm basically screwed. It's not, so for me, it's not a matter of it's not a matter of worrying about getting to my destination. It's you know, if I get to my destination, it just needs to be functioning. And every time I've gone so far, you know, the actual hardware on the EVgo stations has been fine, right? You know, every now and then you encounter something that's broken, but most of that can actually be reactivated or fixed or whatever. But otherwise, right, I'd be finding basically level 2 charging enough to get me to the next fast charger, which actually might be Sacramento. But as I'm traveling, I'll be watching the ranges to make sure I have enough just to get to Galt, because if I don't, I can always stop in Modesto along the way, which is not an ideal stop, but it helps you bridge the gap. So it's nice to have the redundancy. Like I said, I'm not worried right now. We still have, you know, literally hundreds of miles to go. So, but I'm just watching to make sure that the range to our destination is dropping faster than the minimum expected range. We're still trucking along. You know, in some ways it's benefit and a curse to be able to drive for 2 to 2.5 hours between each 1 hour recharge session, because I mean, when you drive as much as I do, after a while, 2.5 hours on a road, it's taxing. So that's about I would actually say at this point I don't particularly like driving for more than about 3 hours without stopping anyway. So yeah, it starts to push the limits after a while. But anyway, the minimum range expected or predicted versus what's on the screen, it's been lowering, but slowly. So right now, I have interesting. Right now, I have 113 miles to go and 104 miles of predicted minimum range left, and but it's slowly been cutting down to, and now it's 112. So it's down to about an 8-mile gap or difference. And actually, this is the off ramp that, if you want to do the San Jose run, basically you would go up this way, which is, it's actually a relatively quick trip. I'm thinking of doing there's a Tesla owner, Alex something, I'm forgetting, but he basically started in the Antelope Valley and went from there to San Jose in his Tesla Model S using only CHAdeMO adapters. Just comparing kind of how slow that was versus superchargers. But based on my experience, his trip was extremely slow, even by Bolt EV standards. So I might do my own video as just sort of a comparison and contrast. Like, I don't think he was like intentionally trying to make like the Bolt EV look bad, or necessarily even like the DC fast charging infrastructure, right? And I think he was just sort of basing his experiences in a Tesla using a supercharger network versus his experiences in a Tesla using the public fast charging infrastructure, the DC fast charging infrastructure. The one thing that I think he failed to account for, though, is the Bolt EV is significantly more efficient than the Model S. So that changes the so with the Model S charging on the fast charger, on the supercharger network, you're getting much higher speeds than you would be getting on like a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger. So that's clearly going to be faster, right? But if a Bolt EV is using the same charger as the Tesla, so the Tesla and the Bolt EV are both using 50 kilowatt chargers, the Bolt EV is actually going to recoup miles faster than the Model S because it's more efficient. So 50 kilowatts in a Bolt EV at freeway speeds is the equivalent of about 200 miles an hour, whereas in a Model S it might only be the equivalent of something like 150 to 175 miles an hour. So yeah, that's and the other issue is tactics too, because I drive this route a lot more. I'm more familiar with it. He's familiar with the supercharger network and the support that goes there, so I would have driven the route differently. Plus, I think he underestimated the efficiency of the Bolt EV, so he made stops that I would never have made. Some of the previous videos just on this route, I kind of showed what the energy usage was, at certain points, so where he's stopping a lot of the time weren't the most efficient stops. You were stopping before you needed to, which gives you an even slower recharge time. So just some thoughts. But yeah. Anyway, back to driving. We still have about 95 miles, so I guess about an hour and 30 minutes left before the next charging stop. But I just wanted to bring you in here because, again, I just sort of scan and am keeping track of the range estimator versus what's on the map. And I didn't like the way the trend was going. Now, it feels a little bit like there might be a crosswind, but you know, temperature's down now into the 50s, right? So pretty much every vehicle, including internal combustion engine vehicles, each 10 degrees you drop below like 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, you're gonna see a significant, about a 5 to 6% drop in fuel efficiency. You know, internal combustion engine vehicle drivers like to think that they're immune from it, but they're not. It's just that when you have, you know, that much wealth, in terms of free energy, you don't really notice if you're wasting a bit of it. So it's just for, you know, a car like the Bolt EV that has the equivalent energy of about 2 gallons of gasoline. You know, it's much more noticeable, and so yeah, dropping down to about, you know, into the 50s now, but about 60 degrees. It feels like there might be a crosswind of some sort. It's hard to tell because the Bolt EV doesn't really succumb to wind that much, but both of those would be having an effect on the fuel economy. But regardless, I didn't like the trend that I was seeing, so it rather than making up ground basically between the distance we have to go and the minimum range, it started to lose ground again. So at one point we were down to like a gap of maybe 8 miles difference. Well, it started trending back up to like 11 or 12 miles difference, and the wrong way. So I just went ahead and slowed the speed down a little bit. I'm still trying to keep with the flow of traffic, but then you have guys like this who like to hover in your blind spot while other people are merging. But anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that my trend is where it needs to be. And you know, we're at a 10-mile gap right now. I have 50% battery left, and we really only have 90 miles to go. So it would take some very seriously bad conditions to prevent me from getting to my destination. But who knows? Any of that's possible. So I'm just gonna drive a little bit more conservatively because you know, driving 3 to 4 miles an hour slower is better than making another stop that I don't need to. Now we're going through Modesto right now, and there well, if you count the town south of Modesto, which is Ceres, and I've stopped at that DC fast charger before. There are a number of fast chargers in Modesto. At least, you know, 3 of them. There's one at the mall, and then there's another one at the gas station at the north side of town. So this is sort of one of those areas that it would be more convenient for me to stop if I wasn't going to be able to make it to Galt. Now, I did slow my speed down a little bit, and so far it seems to be working. We still have, you know, 50 miles to go, but 51 technically. But the gap now between the minimum miles expected and our actual distances dropped to only like 2 or 3, and as as long as it continues that trend, I'm happy. Basically, it means that as long as the miles left to the destination are dropping faster than the minimum expected range, then we should be good, and we won't need to make any additional stops. Just this stop coming up. The thing that is going to be interesting is whether this EVgo charger in Galt stops at 30 minutes or if it continues to charge through, because EVgo has been super inconsistent in the functionality of their chargers, and when I've started a charge after midnight, it seems like it's more likely to go for more than 30 minutes without without shutting down. So I don't know. Maybe this will be the same, or maybe this will be different. We'll see. But I know I need a minimum of about 120 miles of range from leaving from Galt. Now, I have an emergency 25 kilowatt charger that I could use along the way, but I don't want to have to, I don't want to have to stop there if I don't have to. This trip will be a little different than previous trips. I mean, one, I'll be spending a bit more time with my family, but the other thing is I found out that our local electrician up there finally was able to install the NEMA 1450 plug that my juice box uses. So before, it was taking me about 3 days to recharge the car. Now I'll be able to recharge the Bolt EV overnight, and it's going to give me a lot more freedom when I'm up there, but it also means that I don't have to be nearly as conscientious about the amount of range that I have left when I arrive. So before, I was trying to charge up as much as possible because that would limit the amount of time I had to spend hooked up to 120 volts. But now that I'm going to be charging at 240 or 220 to 240, it's really not going to be an issue at all. Well, we're doing it, I guess. So minimum estimated range is 24 miles, and actual distance is 23, almost down to 22 miles now. So we've gotten back to that parity point, or I guess a point in which the distance to the destination is less than the minimum expected range. But we've also hit the point where I believe it's 19% battery, where it goes orange. So it's sort of a warning to you that you're getting into the lower limits of the battery. But again, this is just a subtle warning. It's just orange. It doesn't flash at you. It doesn't beep. Nothing audible. You don't lose any features or functionality. So it's just letting you know that you're in the, like I said, I think less than the bottom 20% of your battery. So okay, so I slowed down a little bit more, but I just got the charge vehicle soon message, which I believe means we're dropping down below where I think we're at 15% right now. And again, this is the first stage is like around 20%, and it indicates, it just, everything goes orange. This second indicator actually comes with an audible alarm and a message that you need to clear. That's basically charge vehicle soon, and then you can just press the check button, hold it down, and clear the message. And like I said, right now what it's showing, it's still orange. What it's showing is 2 bars. And I believe that each bar represents 5%. And each time it dips into a bar, I believe it eliminates it, just to, I think it's basically a conservative sort of gauge, so you know that when that bar is missing, right, you're always going to assume that it's lower than higher. So no bar, you probably think, oh, it's only 10%, when it actually might be 11, 12, 13, 14%, right? But again, there are no other restrictions. Sport mode is still available. There's no reduced propulsion, but just an indicator saying you need to charge soon, a little audible indicator, and so right now that's while we're operating between like 11 and 15%. Now, it still also shows actual range estimates, so you still get the minimum 15 miles with I guess an average expected range of about 19, and we're 11 miles from the destination. Part of it I slowed down just because, you know, there's no reason to push it at this point. You know, we're within a few miles of the charger, and it's not going to gain anything by going 2 to 3 miles an hour faster. And the temperature definitely did drop a bit. Well, it's back up to 60 now, but it was down into the mid 50s earlier. So again, that's having an impact on efficiency. So like I said, no reason to risk it. Just go the 10 miles we have left, and I'll let you know if there's another indicator. Alright, now we're only about 5 miles away from the charger. There it went. I was expecting it to go, so now just the indicator, sport mode is no longer available, propulsion power is reduced. So I think that triggered right at 10%. We still we still have 2 orange bars left, but I think one of them is about to disappear, which means we're between 5 and 10% state of charge. Now, this is sort of the lowest, and you can clear the propulsion power reduced message just the same way, but this is about the lowest it goes. I had a discussion with someone today online where they were saying that in their experience the power actually decreases as you get lower in the state of charge, and I guess that would make sense. It's similar to the way Tesla is, you know, the Teslas are set up in a similar way, where you know, their peak power, their highest power that they're able to produce slowly tapers off as you get down the state of charge. But that hasn't really been my experience, even though I haven't been doing extensive maximum power tests while in reduced propulsion mode. All I know is that that I've been able to produce at least 84, 85 kilowatts of power, which indicates to me that a max power available is probably closer to 100 kilowatts. And also, Motor Trend actually did run their Bolt EV down to, you know, empty, and they were comparing it, I believe, with a Tesla, and yeah, the Tesla has like a limp mode sort of, you know, where it will really reduce propulsion, like max speed of like 20 or 25 miles an hour. but if I remember correctly, the article, they basically said that the Bolt EV just kept saying low, 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 and then eventually just stopped. But it didn't. They also didn't mention any sort of limited power. Now, I'm just gonna slow down, cruise in behind the semi. The other thing is, now that it got down to basically, I think, around 5%, there's one orange line left, one orange battery indicator left, and it flashes. So that's sort of I guess a way of catching your attention if all else you weren't paying attention to anything. So again, I'm not worried right now. A mile and a half from the charger. I've been here before. I know where I'm going. And I kind of expected or planned to be around this low. The efficiency was a little worse than I thought it would be, but that's mainly because I feel like there's been a crosswind maybe, and the temperature definitely dropped. The other thing is too, someone else online has been having that battery issue where GM had a recall on about 150 Bolt EVs where the entire battery needed to be replaced because I guess it shipped with a bad battery cell. Well, this guy's been having a similar experience. The dealership looked at it and didn't actually do anything or replace anything, and now he's had a recurring incident where the car goes from having 50 miles of predicted range to 0 and basically dying in like just a few minutes. And that's similar behavior to what people with the Bolt EV that needed to be recalled experienced. And so I don't know why they haven't taken care of it, but they haven't. So yes, it's another one of them roundabouts. People learn how to drive on them. I did. But yeah, so anyway, the main issue right now I have is arriving at this time. It's really sort of limited in what you have access to and what you can do. So it looks like the Jack in the Box might be open, but I don't think much else is. So it's kind of sucks for me because I think I need to use the bathroom, and well, we'll see. Yeah, getting here at midnight or close there too is not ideal. And yeah, I'm just making my own path. I don't care. There's nobody parked. La la la. One of these days, I think I might actually use a charger on the other side. Of course, and then people leave the cords out. Thanks, buddies. Alright. And it was 8 minutes earlier than predicted. The click of victory. Alright, so here we go. Now I should be down to around 5%, which is, about what I was expecting. And I can definitely feel with the, there's I believe, a Delta breeze coming in. It's pretty cool, pretty moist. That explains the efficiency loss. Yeah, so 4%. So not the most efficient drive-in. Yeah, you can see the trees kind of blowing around in the wind. Not too bad, but enough to, like I said, affect the efficiency. But I might try and grab a nap just because it is getting late, and I still have at least about an hour and a half to 2 hours of driving left. All right, the charge just stopped, so it's time to go get ourselves some more. 22.5 kilowatt hours in 30 seconds, or 30 minutes, 39 seconds. So, yeah, it's pretty consistent with the 45 kilowatt rate that you'd expect. And activated. Alright, so yeah, I mean, I think this section I should be able to get up to, yeah, at least up to 60 to 65%, maybe 70%. And I might just let this session finish out, just keep it in an hour. Hopefully that should give me enough range, but we'll see. We're getting very close to what should be 30 minutes with this charge, and it hasn't stopped yet. And this actually maybe validates that experience that I had earlier, where the charge when that I start after midnight tends to go longer than 30 minutes. But if I start the charge before midnight, like this first charge session that stopped at 30 minutes, I started at like 11:55. So this one I think actually is going past the 30-minute mark. No, I'll check on it now. But that would sort of help to validate my theory that maybe the reason EVgo is doing it is they don't get charged the same peak rates. So yeah, it's already past, it's 31 minutes now. And I'm gonna go do some things to set up in the car before I leave. So I'm kind of hoping to have about 75%. But I might just let it hit 80 while I'm here. But yeah, I'm gonna go take care of that, and I'm gonna have to make a stop on the road because thanks to EVgo's delaying my travel this trip, I'm running 30 minutes late, and basically every business within walking distance is shut down by midnight. And so there's no place to use the bathroom. There's no place to get like a drink or anything else like that. So yeah, they basically, their delay is making me even more delayed now. So and generally uncomfortable, but I'm gonna stop complaining about them now because I have positive things to do. Okay, so I know this is probably just going to be a fairly arbitrary number, but I'm just going to stop the charge at 75%. And even looking at it now, it's already staggered the charge rate down a couple of times, and oh, I'm allowed to stop charging. Well, it looks like it stopped anyway, but at a very odd number, at 37 minutes. 21.68 kilowatt hours and 75. All right, well, that's fine for me. I was gonna stop it anyway, but yeah, EVgo has been rather inconsistent. So yeah, and as I'm leaving here, someone just had noted, because I already posted up a video sort of complaining about EVgo and their online tool sort of misleading me, causing me to basically waste 30 minutes of my time. And this has been a repeated issue. This is, it's on them for two reasons. One, chargers shouldn't shut off at 30 minutes, and two, their website shouldn't have indicated that it was continuing to charge when it wasn't. Um, but the person brought up a very good point about just boycotting, and it's funny they mention it because I was already considering that. So this is a two-way trip for me. I'm heading up to see my family, and I'll be up there for 4 days. But when I'm done, I have to head back. I work 500 miles away, and the weekend is over, and so I need to head back. And they mentioned boycotting. Well, maybe I'm gonna just conduct a little experiment on the trip back and see if I can do the 500 miles without using an EVgo charger. It seems like a decent trade-off, and maybe it might be a little bit inconvenient, but hey, my contract with them is up in November anyway. If they don't wanna fix their stations, their network, whatever, they don't necessarily need me as a customer. So that's a very valid suggestion. So anyway, I'm not gonna delay too much longer. I'm just gonna head out. So all right. So we're leaving Galt. As you might be able to see from the screen when I bring it back up, our destination is 122 miles away, and my minimum range right now is 126 according to the range estimator. So I'm feeling decent about that, even though the temperatures are dropping and there is an elevation increase. So if anything, that's not cool. Don't know why they did that. But if anything, the I'll see worse efficiency. So U-turn only. It's the first time I've actually seen that. Though it's also the first time it's necessary because not letting you make a left turn. Whatever. Usually you see like those left turn, those no left turns are limited for time, but because of busy schedules or whatever, busy traffic times, they don't want you making a left and messing everybody up. But this was something else completely. Ooh, we're going to Sacramento. It's always hard with Sacramento for me because it's south of my final destination, yet for most of the trip it's north. And I'll probably, like I said, drive a bit conservatively just because I don't know all of the conditions and temperatures and things like that, other than the fact that I know that we're going up in elevation, and I know I'm going to need to make a stop along the way, so, or maybe I won't, who knows. A ladder of steel. Alright, well, we're finally heading into Sacramento. It's only about 20-25 miles north of Galt, but yeah, at this point this is a really convoluted intersection, but since the development of navigation and map systems, it's a lot easier to navigate. basically there are like 3 or 4 freeways and highways that all meet and converge here. But essentially you're looping around one, getting on another, and then from there you're actually exiting onto a third freeway. So, but Sacramento at night is a interesting place, so I figured why not show it off. There's a tipping hazard at 35 miles an hour, so I'll try and behave myself. Apparently that's called bicycling. I didn't realize that before, but yeah. I always thought of like Twins, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. Driving a car on 2 wheels. And then as you come in here, just speed on up. And we'll be exiting soon. Also. Now, having grown up in Northern California, but not in Sacramento, Sacramento drivers kind of developed a stigma, or we always sort of characterized Sacramento drivers as a little bit crazy and a little bit scary. So, now are they saying Interstate 5 is closed? No, they're saying the ramp is closed ahead, but this doesn't look closed. So, Interstate 5 is closed. Okay, so now what we have to do is loop around and find an exit, or off-ramp, on-ramp. So, you know, Google Maps is usually up to date on road closures and construction, but this one apparently threw them for a loop. So we just have to kind of follow around and see how far before we have to get back on, or get off and get back on the freeway again. So this wasn't so bad, just a mile or two out of our way. Though they're doing road work here as well, so you know, this very well could mean that this off-ramp is closed. Maybe I'm heading back to Los Angeles down I-5. Stranger things have happened. But I can honestly say I've never been on Sutterville Road before, so GM is promising on its brand is find new roads. Well, done. Alright. But you do have to look, you know, at the silver lining in all of this is now I get to get back on the freeway again. not be. But I will say, with or without construction, I always thought the drive, especially the nighttime drive through downtown Sacramento, was very scenic. So, I mean, it's not very big, but it's at least scenic. You get the sort of lights of the buildings and some decent colors, but I'm guessing right now it's mostly just construction. Yeah, see, I mean, normally there's a lot more, or I should say a lot less ambient light, a lot less noise. The bridge is usually well lit. You could see some of the more historic buildings a little bit better. Yeah. And then they had to put that gaudy Kings logo up there. Ugh. Anyway, but yeah, see, I mean, it can be scenic, but now there's just way too much distractions. Well, I guess I could just line this off the list of scenic downtown drives then. What a shame. So, now we're heading back over by the Sacramento International Airport. And as I believe there is a DC fast charger in the airport parking lot. I never go in there. I don't fly out of Sacramento typically, and I don't fly into Sacramento. But if I remember correctly, yes, there is a DC fast charger in the airport, and this actually sort of marks the northernmost point in California where you're going to find 50 kilowatt DC fast charger. Everything else past this point is 20, 24, 25 kilowatt. They're the 400 volt 60 amp charge point stations, which are fine in an emergency or whatever, or if you're at a if you know you're going to be at a location for an hour or two. I mean, and they're also good for the business in that I don't believe that they require a three-phase power hookup. They might, but I don't know that they do. So there are trade-offs with it. It's not ideal for fast long-range travel, but it's still significantly better than level 2 charging, right? Basically across the board it's 3 times faster. So if it takes you 8-9 hours to recharge to full on a level 2, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 on the 24 kilowatt. But the thing to remember is the state is big, and from this point forward, like I said, that's it. And the other aspect of it is those are CCS only, and I know that a lot of people talk about how CHAdeMO still has a more robust network in the United States than CCS. Well, yeah, but there are still some major gaps in the CHAdeMO. So a Nissan Leaf isn't going to be able to go from Sacramento to Oregon using fast chargers. They're going to have to find whatever level 2 chargers are available, or trailer parks or whatever, RV parks or whatever for the NEMA hookups, but they're not going to be able to fast charge, where a Bolt EV, the Ioniq EV, the i3, any of the CCS, while it's not as fast as 50 kilowatt, literally half the speed, you can still at least DC fast charge for your entire journey from here in Sacramento to Oregon. Now, some of those gaps are going to be really difficult for a car like the Ioniq EV to bridge, because you're going to have 100 to 150 miles between chargers. But if you're Ginger, you could probably make it. Maybe even Marianne. I don't know if you can hear that. And the bouncing. This goes on for a little while. It's called the YOLO bypass. And we're actually on the equivalent of a bridge, about, 40, 50 feet up. Rice paddies, marshland, everything else underneath, floodplain basically. But you could complain about the Bolt EV's suspension, and right now I'm bouncing up and down and resonating. But the thing is, I've driven this in so many different vehicles, and they all feel the same. Yeah, there isn't really any difference. You're bouncing back and forth regardless, so oh well. And now we're finally back to some decently fast freeways. So I was thinking we might actually have been getting a bit of a tailwind, but I can't confirm that, and I'm just looking at the energy consumption, and it's actually relatively high for the speeds that we're going, so I don't know that we are. But then the other thing is too, I could actually feel it getting colder, like the chill in the air, and sure enough, it's already down to 52 degrees. So I'm just trying to make sure I keep an eye on the range. So far we're about, the minimum range estimate is about 10 or 11 miles more than the distance we have left to travel. So again, I'm not too concerned with it. Worst case scenario, what I show up with 10-15 miles of range left, it doesn't really matter. I still just plug in and recharge. So we haven't been able to confirm, or this will be a confirmation that the NEMA 1450 socket works. But even if it doesn't, I can still just charge it 120. That's not a big issue. But yeah, I just want to make sure. And see, now it's down to 51. The temperature is dropping very, very rapidly. So I just need to account for that, because the lower the temperature drops, the worse the efficiency is going to be, especially driving at like 70 miles an hour. So okay, so just based on the the flags, I think I do have a bit of a tailwind, which would explain why the efficiency's actually been pretty decent, despite, because the temperature's been dropping down into the low 50s right now. So and I can definitely feel the temperature difference, but I think most of this is offset though by having maybe a 5-10 mile an hour tailwind, or mostly tailwind, which is, it's instead of driving a little over 70, it's basically the equivalent of driving 65, right? So but again, it all balances out. The cooler temperatures also have an effect. So but regardless, it looks like I'll be able to make it back with minimum of probably 10, 15, 20 miles of range left. So that's pretty cool. And then of course what, it's going to be late as all get out. So I'm just hoping I'll be home by 3. But I think that's ambitious. We'll see. It all depends on the roads. And here, this is Williams, California now. So there's an interchange here with between Interstate 5 and Highway 20. But Williams also has a DC fast charger. I have not actually been to this one, but it's that one of those charge points that I was referring to, the 400 volt 60 amp charge points. So it's a good place to you know, as an emergency stop, I guess. But I've never needed it, and I don't plan to need it anytime soon. If I use it, it would be because I was charging locally. But anyway, yeah, it's just nice to know that it's here. I believe the next one up is actually not until you get to a town called Dunsmuir, which is, if I recall, about 120 miles from here. It's north of Reading. So, but again, it at least makes the trip possible, right? Without it, so right now, if I weren't heading home, if I were, say, continuing on to go to Oregon, I would have stopped at the Williams charge point charger and charged up basically, you know, at least to 85-90%, so that I could head up to Dunsmuir and charge up there. And I guess, side note, if you go off of Interstate 5, there's also Sierra Nevada brewery in Chico that has one of the charge point 24 kilowatts. So good stuff. Well, we're finally on the road home. But yeah, notice it's already 48 degrees, and we really haven't increased our elevation all that much yet. So it's something to keep in mind. But I'm really not worried. I have minimum range of 43 miles left, and I know that my actual distance is less than 25. It's like 23. So yeah, I'm not worried. But and then yeah, it's just gonna keep dropping in temperature. I don't know what it will be by the time, like, at the coldest point, but it could actually be in the high 30s. It happens. Of course, the other thing that's happening now is I think I'm gonna need to have my defroster on. So not quite sure why the windows are fogging up, but they are. I guess it's just a temperature difference. But yeah, normally I wouldn't have to worry about it. It's usually pretty dry up here, but yeah, I guess just a right combination of moisture in the air and cool temperatures. The other thing is too, whenever this video ends up getting published, this is right about the time there's that 5,000 mile long atmospheric river that's stretching from China to British Columbia, and we're, I think, going to get some tailings of that. In fact, I think we had forecast for rain, I think tomorrow. So the skies are clear right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So, oh well. We're about to head up what the locals here usually refer to as the grade. Ironically, the temperature actually went up again as we've been going up in elevation. So the drop in temperature might actually be a result of the wind that's blowing in. Like I said, I kind of refer to that as a delta breeze. So it usually has a cooling effect because it's coming up through the San Francisco Bay, and so all that cold ocean air is getting pushed up into the valley, and it helps cool things off, which means that up in elevation we're not quite as cold, but we've got other things to cool us down. But yeah, this is a pretty cool road. I like driving. It's about a 10% grade in some places. In some places it's more or less. The main thing is you have to watch for falling rocks, but being dry, that's less of an issue. Still, you just have to be aware. And then of course wildlife and things like that. So but otherwise, it's a fun drive, You just have to live with the fact, or accept the fact, that there's a 600 to 800 foot drop off with no guardrail. YOLO. The other thing is too, it's good that it doesn't have like a foreboding name, like the Devil's Elbow. That would just be crazy. That is actually its name. Looks like an elbow. But at least it's not a devil's post pile. That's just kind of ridiculous. Why did the devil have a post pile? He's clearly a girder man. Looks like I just hit the low warning, so everything turned orange now. But again, not too worried. I got plenty of range. Right? Right. Oh. Popping ears. Coming back down the other side, part of the reason I'm not worried about range is you regenerate quite a bit. Because as steep as it is going up, it's pretty steep going down. It's just a little bit shorter, so there's still a net elevation increase, but again, it's a fun little jaunt in the mountains, or hills, I guess. I could show mountains later, but yeah, these aren't them. And of course, like I said, I don't know with the fires, the wildlife could be spooked a little bit, though that's over 100 miles away. The big thing is, there's no moon out, so it's much less likely to have wildlife walking on the roads. But again, you also still have to be, cautious and keep your eyes open. Always be ready. And that's I never drive faster than I can see it. Besides, it's all in the reflexes. awkward, like, yeah, jump up, but whatever. I was gonna refer to this section as the roller coaster. It was just up and down, up and down. I'm sure they'll repave this road one of these days. No, they won't. Yeah, see, now it's down to 40. All right, well, we've arrived. So, actually, other than the 30-minute EVgo mishap, um, it's about the time I expected. I must have forgotten to communicate with my family that I was coming up today because the Volt is parked where I would normally park to plug in when I'm here. So I'll just take care of that in the morning. It won't do any harm to have it, sitting at like 15, 20%. It's not going to get that much colder tonight. So anyway, journey well done. But yeah, that's about what I expected.